Australian ITC Championships. So I'm running the Black Legion. This is the biggest Warhammer 40k event that Australia has ever had, with 250 odd players. So really exciting. I've been doing these live updates after every second round. So I'm currently on a 5-win, 1-loss track record, so I'm doing quite well. And I just wanted to update you on my last 2 games, because I've done all the previous 4 rounds in a live stream update already. So it's the morning of day 3. We're just packing up our venue so that we're ready to go home, go to the event, have the games, drive home. So I thought I'd just hit you guys with a quick update now to let you know how I went in the last 2 games and what I'm sort of predicting for day 2. So day 3, sorry. So the first round 5, because I've had 6 games, so round 5 was a win against Jack Lavacombe, who's the captain of the Australian Capital Territory team for the Australian and New Zealand Team Championship. So that's the one of the other big important events in Australia. He's the captain of their team. I'm the captain of the Victorian team, so it was a bit of a captain v captain duel, which was really interesting and exciting. And basically, my list is, obviously, for those who don't know, it's the Black Legion, a bunch of Terminators, a bunch of characters, and then a bunch of Dreadnoughts, Hellbrutes, or Heckbrutes as I like to call them, and Decimators as well. So there's a question asking there for how the meta's changed. I'll hit that in a minute. I'll do the summary of the games first. But if I forget, remind me, just chuck another comment in there. So that was my list, and his list was MSU Drakari. So he had a bunch of Incubi in boats. He had the big Court of the Archon. He had a bunch of witches in boats. Had Drazar. Just a whole fuck ton of just stuff, right? So we basically got stuck into it, and I basically got first turn. I Veilbreaker played it up into the middle of the table, did my Warp Ritual and all that sort of shit, and just sat there with this big brick of Terminators wrapped around all my characters, and he basically just couldn't fucking do anything to him. He knew that if he charged into him, because I would always fight first, I would just basically interrupt and just shred everything that hadn't fought yet. So he knew he couldn't hit me in combat, and he had no shooting. So, and because of the way that I'd balled up, he couldn't do something like, charge me from both sides to string me out and cause coherency problems and make it so that only one Terminator could fight into each unit. He couldn't do that. And even if he did, one Terminator kills a fuck ton of witches. So he's just like, I can't deal with the Terminators. He can't deal with Abaddon. So he just sort of stayed away from them, which meant that I controlled the center. And then every time he would go for one of the flanks, I would bring my Heckbrutes or my Decimators or my Raptors in from those strategic reserves and just shred whatever came on the board, which caused a significant problem for him. So he just played it really smart, and what he did is he played the secondary game. He played the primary game. So he just basically said, okay, you can have that one, but he's going to keep denying my primary by every time I'd put something on an objective, he'd just put more bodies on it. Like if I put a Hellbrute or Heckbrute on an objective, he'd just go, cool, I'm going to fly a couple of witches over, touch that, that's mine now. And then obviously, in my turn, I'd kill them off, but they're denying him primary, but also I'm not getting any primary. So we both scored quite low on the primary game, but he was scoring quite well on his secondaries. I was scoring quite well as well. I took Grind Them Down, obviously, and I was just going killing a fuck ton of stuff. I took Warp Ritual, and I think I took Banners for my last one, which in hindsight was maybe a mistake because I didn't score massively. I basically had my home banner up most of the game, but he actually managed to take it down at one stage, and I had the banner in the center up for a fair bit of the game. So I think I got like 7 or 8 points for banners, maybe even less. It wasn't a great choice, but yeah, and it came down to an 88-point win to me and an 84-point loss to him, so it was really close. So he played it artfully, like he knew exactly what he needed to do, which was stay the fuck away from those Terminators, stay out of line of sight as often as possible, play the primary, play your secondaries. So in hindsight, perhaps I should have played a bit more aggressively with my Terminators, just so that he wouldn't have the units left to deny my stuff. I was actually kind of like playing with my food to a degree, because I I didn't want to just kill everything in the first turn because I took grind them down. That would mean that he would, you know, not have units left for me to kill. So there was one point where he had a single witch, and I was like, I'm actually going to keep that witch alive. I'm intentionally not going to kill it, because I had plenty of stuff that could have killed it, but I was like, I'm just not going to kill it, because then I can kill it next turn, and that helps my grind them down. But I didn't realize that witch had objective secured, so in his turn, he's just like, whoop, flies over onto my, and they're fast as fuck, so he just flies over onto my home objective, takes that off me, because he's obsec, and takes down my banner, and I'm like, fuck. So that, I didn't want to risk losing 3 points on grind them down, but instead, I've lost fucking 5 or 6 points because he's taken down a banner that I now need to turn around and go put back up, and he's denying my home objective, which means less primary. So yeah, so I think the lesson I've learned there is kind of maybe take an extra minute to think about, if you're going to leave a unit alive, what could that unit potentially do? Not just, I want to get grind, therefore I leave it alive. Think, I want to get grind, so I want to leave that alive, but if I leave that alive, what can it do? That was the step that I missed. But luckily it didn't cost me that much. You know, it cost me some victory points, but I was far enough ahead that it didn't really matter. So that was that game. Really good game. Jack's a fucking sick cut. We were laughing the whole time. Yeah, it was an amazing game. I might even try to get him on the channel. He's essentially from New South Wales, so it might be hard, but he's a very charismatic guy. He's a very funny guy, so I think he would be a really good addition to a battle report, or even just a podcast or something like that. So that was that game. And then the second game was actually into Lachlan Rigg, who is the captain of the Western Australian team for the Australian-New Zealand Team Championships. So it was another duel between captains. And he was running Dark Angels, and I was sweating because I had just been dumpstered by Adam Camilleri on his Dark Angels. So I was like, I know how this game goes. This game goes really bad for me because those Dark Angels actually do have the firepower to shoot through those Terminators. There were a few key differences to this guy's list. So Adam had 2 big units of Black Knights. Lachlan Rigg he had 3 small units, or mid-sized units. So that wasn't quite as scary. And then a few tech choices, like he didn't have Ignores Cover in his list, whereas Adam did. And he also had, instead of the Thunderstrike, whatever the fucking big Primaris Landspeeder looking things are, instead of those, he had the Dark Angels Plasma Cannon hoverboat things. Fuck, I don't know the names. But yeah, so he had a few of those, which they're fucked, man. They're only 100 points. According to him, I haven't checked it, but he told me they're only 100 points. And I'm like, it's 9 wounds, so it doesn't get bracketed. It's got fly, it can move fucking infinite inches. If it advances, which it always does, it gets a 4-up invulnerable save. I'm like, that's fucked. Even if it had no guns, that's fucked. You know, just being able to fly this fucking 4-up invulnerable save tank around, that's crazy for 100 points. You know, like I take my Hellbrutes, or Heckbrutes, primarily just because they're a 105 point unit that can come in from reserves. That's the main reason, and they're relatively tough. But they don't have an invulnerable save, so people just shred through them. Whereas these things, these 4-up invulnerable save, they fly, and they're fucking fast. So I was like, wow, they're cool. He had like 3 of those. And he also had the one that gives you the -1 to hit shooting thing, that tank. So he had that, and he had Azrael. And basically, his plan is he basically advances half of his army to the right, and then Azrael and all the Plasma Inceptors, because he had a fuck ton of Plasma Inceptors, they go to the left, and Azrael gives all the Plasma Inceptors the 4-up invulnerable save. So it's basically an army-wide 4-up invulnerable save, and a shit ton of Plasma. So that was his plan. So in this game, I went first again, which was huge. I needed to go first, because otherwise he could potentially blast me before I get my buffs up. I was able to deploy the Terminators in such a way that he wouldn't be able to get shots on them, but what he would be able to do is fan out and take the board, and then I couldn't Veilbreaker into the center, which means it would be hard for me to get my Warp Ritual, and things go downhill very fast. So that was the thing. So I got first turn. Basically, I Veilbreaker into the center, and knowing that he didn't have Ignores Cover in his list, I basically put my characters behind a wall within 6 inches of the center, so that I could sit there and do my Warp Ritual, sit there and do my buffs. And then I put all of the Terminators up, put the Melter Gun Terminators behind the wall, but touching the cover. And I put all the Bolter Terminators on the front, touching the cover, so that I could shoot downrange with all my bolters. And then I put all the reroll hits and wounds and all that shit on them. And then I shot down and killed, like, out of a squad of 5 Black Knights, I killed 3. Or 4, yeah, and then 1 ran to morale, I think. Or maybe it was 4. Either way, he had 1 left in the squad. So that was my turn 1. And then in his turn, he basically killed my 2 units of cultists that I were using to move block his Black Knights, because they can move like 37 inches in the first turn. They just yeet up the table. And if they do that, they can shoot my Terminators. So I had to put cultists out to move block him so that he couldn't get lines on my Terminators if he went first. So he killed my 2 units of cultists. He killed 1 and he killed the other one down to a single cultist remaining. And this is actually really important because we were playing Data Scry Salvage. So in my first turn, when I've teleported the Terminators up, I've moved one of my cultist units up to be touching the 2 objectives on my left for the Data Scry, the 2 that are running down the center. I just like advanced up onto those objectives. And I positioned the cultists so that like there was one couple touching that objective, a couple touching that objective, and the rest strung behind a ruin. So he shot at me, and his first volley, he killed like 6 cultists. So I removed all the ones that were on the objectives and kept the ones that were out of line of sight, so he couldn't continue to shoot them. Then in the morale phase, I lost a bunch more, down to the point where I only had like 2 guys left. And then the other unit of cultists, he evaporated. So then at the start of my command phase, he's like, oh, no primary for you. And I'm like, up. I was within 6 inches of the table edge, so I'm like, Tide of Traitors, which is the first time I've ever used that stratagem. Tide of Traitors, you get D3 plus 3 cultists back to the unit. So I've resurrected them, and then basically I've been able to use that to string back onto both of those objectives, meaning I get my primary, and it also denies him primary in the subsequent turn, because I've now got cultists on there, which means I don't need to send Terminators that way, which was huge. And then basically, so that was my second turn, is I've resurrected my cultists. In his first turn, he killed like 3 Terminators, I think, with all of his shooting, because I was in cover, had all my buffs up. He didn't overcharge any of his guns, so he basically didn't do much damage to me. Whereas what Adam did is Adam just went hard. He just overcharged all of his guns, and he was like, he didn't care if he suicides into me, he needs to kill those Terminators, which was the right move. Lachlan didn't make that move. Lachlan just didn't want to lose his stuff, so he didn't overcharge. But he killed a few of them. Then we went into my turn 2, and basically I resurrected Terminators, moved them across. I moved them out of my buff range, so I just advanced and charged them across the board into his Black Knights and just left my characters hiding behind the wall, because my theory was I've got my buffs up this turn, so I'm going to kill those Black Knights, get in the cover. He's not going to be able to kill me on the backswing because I've got all my buffs up, so I'm going to get another turn out of the Terminators, and then once that's happened, I've got 3 turns of damage out of them. I'm happy for them to die at that point. They will have done their job. So I was like, I don't actually need the buffs for the next turn, so I've just sent them in. And then I had my Apostle, my Master of Possessions, and my Terminator Sorcerer within 6 inches of the center, but behind a wall. And then I sent Abaddon out to kill some Plasma Inceptors. So we've gone there, we've killed the Plasma Inceptors, we've killed the Black Knights. Decimators came on from the table edge, killed some more Black Knights. Hellbrutes came on, didn't do anything. They capped an objective. And one of them came on to do my action on the home objective so that I get my Data Scry points. And then we went into Lockie's turn 2, and he brought down a fuck ton of units now. He brought down the rest of his reserves. He brought back his infiltrators. He did a bunch of damage into the Terminators, killed a couple more. He killed the remaining cultists, down to 1 man left again. He was getting real frustrated by these cultists. The cultists were MVPs in this game, absolute MVPs. And then what else happened? He killed the Hellbrute. He killed not that much really. In retrospect, he did a lot of things where he was like splitting his shots between like a Hellbrute and a character, and then the characters were just bouncing, like passing all their saves, so he wasn't doing much. And then he charged his like champion on a bike, beat stick guy, into my Dark Apostle, And I tanked so many saves, like, because the Dark Apostle has those two little plebs with him as well, and they get a 4-up invulnerable save as well. So he's just like, cool, he's like 6 wounds, and I'm like, yep, pass save, pass save, pass save, failed save, kills the cultist, failed save, kills the cultist, pass save, pass save. So he did no damage to the Apostle himself. And then the Apostle was able to strike back and nearly killed the guy. And then in the next turn, I did what was supposed to be a really huge play. Was I basically fell back with the Apostle towards the Terminators. Oh no, what he did was brilliant. So when he charged me with the champion, he positioned himself so he was equal distance between the Apostle and the Master of Possessions with the charge move, with the pile-in, so that he could fight the Apostle, and then he has some kind of relic or warlord trait or something that when he piles in, he can go towards the closest character or something instead of towards the closest enemy model. So he basically then used that. I think that's how it works. I used something like that to basically pile away from the Apostle so that he could swing around behind the Master of Possession so the Apostle couldn't strike back. That's what happened. I remember now. But that meant that my Apostle was no longer engaged in combat. So in my turn, the Apostles advanced to get over towards where the Terminators are, and then the Terminators have advanced so that they could string one guy back to be within 6 inches of the Apostle, and the other guys strung forward to go towards his home objective. And then I spent the 2 CP to out of phase auto pass my prayer, which meant that the Terminators now had advance and charge. I could have put illusory on them, but I was like, nah, the Terminators aren't, like I said, I'm happy for them to die at this point. I just want to get another turn of damage out of them. So I put advance and charge on him, and then I resurrected one closer to him, and he was like, this Terminator unit that he had pre-measured, thinking that it was, a 5-inch move and a 12-inch charge, was like 17 inches, and then they were in difficult, dense terrain as well. So he was like, okay, take 2 off, so it's 15 inches. So he basically put himself 15.1 inches away, but he just didn't see the advance and charge trick coming, and he didn't see the resurrection coming. And I rolled a 2 for my advance, and then I CP'd it into a 5. So they were just like way faster than he thought, because he was looking at it and he's like, oh, the Apostle's ages away, so you don't get your advance and charge prayer. And he didn't ask me. If he asked me, I would have been like, yeah, but I can do it for a CP, for 2 CP. But yeah, he didn't ask the question, and to be honest, I wasn't thinking of it at the time. Like that idea came to me in my turn. So if he had asked me, I would have thought about it and said, actually, yes, there is a way, but it just didn't come up. We were just talking shit and whatever. So yeah, that was a huge play, and then the Decimators moved up, and I got my behind enemy lines, maxed that out because I had 2 Decimators in his back lines pretty much whole game. Those Decimators were fucked. He just couldn't kill them. He was just bouncing off them because I kept, putting the neg-1 damage on them. Or I would tell him I can put neg-1 damage on him. So as a result, he just wouldn't overcharge. And as a result, he was just doing 1 damage anyway. So yeah, so that was good. And then yeah, basically it was a really close game in the end, because he was really smart in that he basically, everything that he arrived from Deep Strikes arrived like on a table edge. Like he was as far away from me as he could possibly be. And that meant that I just wasn't able to fucking get him, like, because most of my damages, it was either melee or it was coming from the Decimators from outflank, but he was able to sort of go, okay, your only options, you can come on here or there. So as a result, if I place myself here, you won't be able to get lines on me. He played it quite well in that regard, which really hurt my ability to get those no prisoners points, because he's got a lot of multi-wound models. So I was like, no prisoners is decent, because I got to kill that shit. I can't let it shoot me all game. But because he was able to put it so far away, it became difficult. I still ended up getting as much points as I realistically could have out of that unit, out of that secondary, but he made it very hard. Yeah, and that more or less sums up the game. So I think that was an 87-point win to me, 77-point loss to him. So that's another victory for the Team Vic captain versus the captains of WA. So I got 2 captains' skulls on my skull trophy shelf, which is pretty cool. Now we're going into day 3. So day 3, so they're doing a pod system similar to the LVO here, which basically means that I'm now, regardless of the results of these games, I'm locked into the top 20 of the 250 odd players, but I can't get any better than 16th, which does mean that the next two games don't massively matter. So basically, we're going to go into the games, and realistically, the second it gets, if it gets angsty or anything like that, I probably will just sort of dial it back and just be like, cool, man, if you want to get angsty, have the win, because I know that I'm already locked into the top 20 anyway, so I don't care. Whereas if they weren't doing the pod system and I was able to say I hypothetically win the two games today and go 7-1 and get on a podium, well, then I would be like, okay, I'm going to try and win these games. But because of the pod system, it doesn't really matter. So if it's angsty, I'll just be like, yeah, cool, man. If you want to be like that, have the win. I don't care. So we'll see how we go. But I'm not putting a lot of stock in these two games today. As far as I'm concerned, the event is more or less over. And this last two games is really just determining, who wins the event, which I'm not in contention for. So this is more just a couple of fun games, really. But we'll see how we go. The pod I'm in currently has 2 Custodes players in it. So we'll find out, because if people drop out, that'll obviously impact the placings. And then they'll have to redo the pods and all that sort of shit. So if there's any drops, that may change. And a lot of people do drop out on day 3 on these bigger events because they can't be fucked with the effort of the last games, especially because of the pod system, and they know that they're effectively locked into their thing anyway. A lot of people just go, cool, I'll take a fucking win at this rate, or whatever. So we'll see. And I don't think my army's particularly good into Custodes, so yeah, we'll see. But yeah, that sums it up. Let's have a look at the comments and see what you guys have been saying, and I'll answer some things. So, how has the meta changed due to lack of Armor of Contempt so far? Well, it's interesting. So there's lots and lots of Marines, fuckloads of Marines. I think it was nearly 30% of the field with Marines. I think the big change is that Custodes are back in a big way. There's lots of Custodes players, because now that the playing field is evened and nobody has Armor of Contempt, well, the Custodes have lots of AP1 damage. They have lots of 2 damage weapons, which are really good into Marines. They're really fucking tough. They've got lots of tricks. They got back all of their stratagems, and all of the previous nerfs that have been put on them have been removed. So Custodes are back in a big way. There's Dark Angels fucking everywhere. There's Knights everywhere. There's lots of their Eldar with their Hail of Doom. There's a lot of that, because obviously those AP1 guns actually matter now. There's nowhere near as many CSM players as I'd like to see, but hopefully I'm showing you guys that it can be done with CSM. That's the plan. That's what this channel's all about, is showing you that, CSM still have legs. We've still got some powerful stuff. I'm not 100% sure if the Terminator Bomb is still the way to go, just because there will be certain matchups where your opponent just will have the Dakka to blast through it in a single turn. And if they can do that, then you kind of just can't win that matchup, because if you lose your Terminators in the first turn, that's 420 points of your army gone, and all of those support characters were specifically there to buff the Terminators, so they're effectively gone as well. So you lose like 1,000 points worth of investment in the first turn. You can't come back from that. I don't care how good Hellbrutes are, you can't come back from that. Speaking of the Hellbrutes though, they're fucking amazing. That when somebody shoots you, you shoot back for a CP. So fucking good. I had against the Drakari player, he ran like a succubus up, some witches up, right in front of a Hellbrute, and the succubus was right at the front. And then he shot at it with a Bright Lance, which did like 6 damage. But I was like, yep, cool, 6 damage. I'm gonna shoot your fucking succubus now. And he was like, what? And I'm like, yep, 1 CP. I can just shoot you back because you didn't kill me. I killed the succubus, and he was like, what? I was like, yeah, it's fucking good. 1 CP to kill a succubus, I'll take that. So yeah, that's so good. The fucking Hellbrutes are good. It didn't come up as much in the Dark Angels game. I think I did shoot back, but I think I killed 2 Plasma Inceptors with that. But it was relatively inconsequential in terms of the game. So yeah, that was cool. But yeah, obviously this being the first event since Arx Vermin, it's going to take a while for the Arx Vermin meta to settle in. I think the biggest change that everybody's overlooking, and a lot of people are currently not misplaying, but they're missing an opportunity here, is the free strat reserves. That's fucked. Like almost every game, I'm putting all 3 Hellbrutes and both Decimators and the Raptors all in strat reserves. And it's been amazing because I'm able to come on, get angles. My opponent can't shoot me before I shoot them. I'm going for those 9-inch charges on the Hellbrutes from reserves, which is, it's not great, but when you've got 3 of them, you're probably going to make 1 charge. And then you're punching things. Like, strat reserving things is fucking so critical, especially in a meta where there's so much damage output that anything that's visible on the table is going to die. So I think Arx Vermin season is going to be all about MSU, because there's no point investing in big units because they die just as fast as small ones, right? So because everything's damage is dialed up to the fucking ceiling. So multiple small units, hugging cover, hugging terrain, and anything that can't hide is in strat reserves. And then basically you only pop out when you can kill the thing that would be able to kill you in return. And you basically just hug the cover and hide all game, bringing on your strat reserves into safe places where they can deal damage but not be dealt with in return, or make it as hard as possible. I think that's going to be the play. So I'm looking at potentially pivoting into like an Emperor's Children style list, Blastmaster Noise Marines, Hellbrutes from reserves, essentially taking my current list but fucking off Abaddon, fucking off the Terminators, fucking off a bunch of those support characters, and replacing them with a bunch of Noise Marines and Legionaries that are all going to be strat reservable. I'm thinking something like that could be cool. Cool, what else have we got here? Sound quality went down hard. It's probably the internet connection here. I'm in the middle of fucking Adelaide, which is essentially a small country town. It's the capital city of South Australia, but it's a shithole. List is online. So the list is online. People asking where my list is. It's on BCP, so you'll be able to see it on there. If you just look up Uprising, is the name of the event. And yeah, maybe I'll post it up on my Facebook page or something like that. It's definitely in my Discord for my Patreons, but I'll see if I can post it somewhere for you guys. Quick question. Would you choose 3 Hellbrutes and a couple of Decimators, or 3 Obliterators and 3 Hellbrutes? The Decimators were fucking key. So I did play with the idea of having 1 Decimator and 2 Hellbrutes, 2 Obliterators, because 90 points each, and that's 180 points for a Decimator. So I played around with the idea of that, and the idea there was it was going to help me get behind enemy lines, because I'd be able to just drop those the fucking Obliterators in little pockets in my opponent's backfield, just score those behind enemy line points. And also, Obliterators, they do okay shooting, they do okay combat, and they're kind of tough, right? So they tick all the boxes, they're fine, they're a good unit. I like them as units of 1, just so that they're harder to screen out. You drop them in, and they do all right there. So I did toy around with that idea, but ultimately I made the call to just have, instead of those 2 Obliterators, just have the 2nd Decimator, because the mortal wound output on those guys is just legit. Looking back on my games, I think the Hellbrutes the Obliterators may have been a better call, because I haven't really had any games where I've needed the mortal wound output. The Decimators were mainly there for the Knights matchup, right? The fucking... Sorry, I'm tired as fuck. They were mainly there for the Demons matchup, because trying to get through those demonic saves is really hard, especially on the big toughness 8 like Scarbrand and the Bloodthirster and stuff. It's really hard. So I needed something in my list that was going to be able to just put 8 wounds on that fucking Bloodthirster without having to worry about it, right? And 2 Decimators do that, because they put out an average of like 6 to 7 each. So, that's a pretty reliable 8 wounds to that Bloodthirster. And then I can, smite it for a couple, and then I can charge it and do the rest in combat and just kill it in 1 turn. So I need to be able to do that. And also the big Lord of Change with the 3-up invulnerable save, T8 neg 1 to wound. It's like, what are you killing that with other than mortal wounds? Like, really, you're not. Mortal wounds or combat, and he'll protect it from combat. So I was like, if that big Lord of Change is there, and that's a very common unit, you see that in a lot of demon armies, and demon armies are quite common. I was like, no, I can't let you have it, so I've got to bring the decimators for that. So I think 2 decimators is a minimum, 3 is optimum, but yeah, we'll see. Buses with 5 Chosen, 5 Legionnaires. Yeah, that's not bad. I'm not sure if I rate Chosen at the moment, to be honest. Because they do, I'd probably just go with more Legionaries, to be honest. Because Chosen, it's a lot more points. And the 3 wounds is less relevant because people are speccing into killing Marines, so they're already bringing damage 3 weapons. So I don't think 3 damage, 3 wounds is much better than 2. It's not a 50% increase. It's like, because in so many situations it just doesn't matter. So I don't think 3 wounds is that relevant. The melee weapons are good, but Mark of Khorne with a chainsword is almost the same as a regular fucking Chosen. So yeah, and then I don't think they're worth it. I don't think they're worth their points, unfortunately. So I'd just go double Legionaries, get that OBSEC in there. Ramen Rivera has created a paste bin for my list. Thanks, mate. I appreciate that. That's really helpful. Super keen to hear how it's going. What other questions have we got here? 3 red Corsairs, Slaanesh, Hellbrute, Fist with Flames. Yeah, that's solid. I guess I need to get some Heck Brutes. Fuck yeah, you do. Opinions on running smaller units of Terminators like a couple of 5-mans? Absolutely not. Not with these points cost increases. They went up in points, and the only reason that they went up in points is because when you run them as 10-man, with Marcus Slaanesh, with Illusory Supplication, with Delightful Agonies, with the Black Rune, they become a problem, right? So they've nerfed them based on that. So we weren't running them as 5-man units before, and now they got worse. So definitely not. Unfortunately, I would have liked to, but unfortunately not. 5-man Rubrics with Warp Flamers. Yeah, the Rubrics is an interesting one, particularly with Black Legion, because you can Veil Breaker them in, and then flame the fuck out of something turn 1, which is kind of cool. But I think with the loss of Armor of Contempt, it makes it kind of hard, because they used to be able to, if something was AP damage 1, they could reduce the AP by 1, so that combined with Armor of Contempt made them very, very tough. They're not as tough now, so I don't know, maybe. Another random question as a new player: was it a good time? Never been to an event like this. Oh, dude, events like this are amazing. It's like a capstone event of the year. Going to these big 200+ player events, so much fun. You'll make I've made lifelong friends at these things. You'll probably make a couple of enemies as well, but it's worth it. It's, for me, 40k has always been primarily a social thing, right? Like, I got into it with mates, and it was something that we would do on a weekend when we were hanging out, right? So it's more about the hanging out with your mates thing than it is about the competitive thing, right? And this is just that dialed to 11. Like, we get a car full of blokes and we drive from Melbourne to Adelaide, which is like a 9-hour drive, add in breaks and whatever. So it's a big drive. We shit talk the whole way there. We get an Airbnb and we all crash together. We're playing Mario Party on the Wii last night, just drunk blokes having fun. It's fucking amazing. So I highly recommend anybody who's got even just a couple mates that play 40k, get together, go to your first event together, have a laugh, talk to the TO, tell him you're relatively new and you want to, if you want to meet people, and he'll be like, oh yeah, these guys are sick cunts, or those guys are shit cunts, or he'll help you out. And yeah, it's a sick way to meet people, a sick way to fucking have a ton of fun. And I find that generally the bigger event, the more fun, because the smaller events, it tends to get a bit more cliquey, I guess, where you're like the weird new guys over in the corner, whereas the bigger events, nobody knows anybody, so it's a lot more social, a lot more interesting. Like they had a big trivia night on the Saturday night, 40k trivia, which was kind of cool. Yeah, so I highly recommend it. They're fucking sick fun. But yeah, all right, guys. Well, I'm gonna wrap it up here because I gotta go get ready for the event. For the event. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I will update you guys potentially on the drive home, if not tomorrow, on my results from today. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.